2 months ago, I quit my consulting job to build a startup. I'm young, ambitious, and maybe a bit delusional. After pivoting around, we landed on our current idea. A social app to meet like-minded, cool people in a big city without any friction. Welcome back. We're actually gonna code the app this week. This is quite crazy. 2 months ago, I can't even code hello world. But 2 months later today, I'm actually attempting to put a full-fledged app with a front end, a back end, and a database. So yeah. We'll see how this week actually goes.
Wanna get a mansion, a jacuzzi.
The more we brainstorm, the more it seems like what we're building is Facebook, but for meeting people in real life. As young professionals in the city, we struggle to find easy and frictionless way to meet new friends. It feels like you either go to an uptight networking event with complete strangers, or stick to hanging out with your same group of friends. We want to make it easy to socialize and meet interesting people by building an app that is invite to join only, where everyone you meet is through a mutual friend on the platform. Morning, happy Sunday. I actually had like a 4 or 5 hours meeting with Jack yesterday discussing Matcha and whether we even need to build an app to start with. The idea of Matcha really is to build a platform where it is more frictionless to meet people, and we're doing that through mutual connection and an exclusive invite-only community to begin with. But the problem is, to validate the idea, we're just thinking if we actually need to build out an app, because everything is opportunity cost, right? If we spend this week building out an app, that we could have been spent doing something else. And we're just thinking whether building an app is the highest leverage thing we can do at this moment. We're already organizing physical meetups using a shared Google Calendar, which is basically our MVP of the MVP. We're just thinking whether it's worth it to spend the time whilst we wait for those events to happen to build an app for it. Didn't really have any conclusion yesterday. That's one thing I realized about building startups. This is like my first time actually being in the deep end building stuff. It is a lot more complicated than I thought it will be. I've always heard people say like, oh, building a startup is really complicated. You always have to pivot. Your ideas keep evolving and changing. But it's the first time that I've actually personally experienced it, and it is unlike anything that I've done before. I've never done something before where 1 week ago, I was essentially saying something completely different, and then a week later, the whole direction basically changed. Not the most comfortable thing, but very interesting experience. And I think I'm gonna meet up with Jack and David again today to further flesh out some ideas we talked about yesterday. But for now, I'm gonna go play some football.
Round your city, round the clock. Everybody needs you.
Starting small, gaining momentum is one of the most important things on my journey so far. A simple logo for the app leads to a simple landing page, which leads to a visual design of your app. Small wins help me see my own progress and add momentum to what I'm working on. We ended up deciding to build the app anyway, whilst we organized in-person events to start building a small potential user base. And I also think that it's good to build the community first, because even if they don't like this idea, we serve the community and we can solve their problem by pivoting and building something else.
Yeah. I mean, I think to be fair, these two can happen at the same time, honestly.
Yeah.
But I think the lesson learned from this media.
My friend actually built out a prototype for the app, which I think is really cool, and I'll show you right now. Bear in mind, this is not the actual app. There's no functionality. Everything there is just to visually show you what the app will look like. But essentially, this is the first page where you'll be told to join the app. Once you press that, there will be like some text that tells you what the app is about. We stuck with the Matcha green color scheme for the whole app, which I think is quite cool. Again, keep signing in. And then as you get into the homepage, which is actually the bulk of what I am trying to build right now with my code, is something like this. Essentially a homepage with all the different events that you organize, or your friends organize, or your mutual friend organize, that's shown in the list like this. And once you click into each event, there'll be like a more detailed breakdown of the event with the date, the time, etc. And then at the bottom, you can tick if you want to go to the event or not, and it'll save it to another page called your events, or a profile page where the events shown are only the one that you are hosting, or events that you have indicated that you want to go. And having this layout, having this visual layout of what I'm trying to code just makes it a lot easier, and also makes me a lot more motivated to be coding because there's actually a visual representation of where I want to get to. It is currently 10:20 p.m. Just had dinner with my parents, but the grind never stops. So basically for the last few days, I've just been coding. I'm not gonna show you anything visual for now. I'm just gonna describe it to you, mainly because I haven't done any of the styling and it's gonna look disgusting if you see it now. I'm basically the only one coding it right now. My two other partner is working on like different part of Matcha, which we'll get into later. And what I've built up right now is basically user authentication, which means people can sign in with Google, sign up, make an account, and then sign into the platform, where everyone will have their own profile page, where people can go to other people's profile page and add them as a friend. There's page routing, meaning there's a home page and then you can navigate to a your events page. You can navigate to your own profile page, and you can even navigate to other users' profile page and then send a friend request. On the platform, you can also reserve spots for events that your friends are hosting, and you can also edit your events, add the date, time, description, how many free spots there are. So I'm actually quite proud because if you look back to the last proper project I did, which was just this to-do list app, this is like another level in terms of the coding requirements. But I'm also gonna say, right, I didn't actually code most of the code from scratch. 80% of the code was generated by AI. That brings us to another topic, right? What I've been able to build is something that I probably won't be able to build until 3, 4, maybe 5 months down the line after I've properly learned coding. But because I have a foundational knowledge of JavaScript and React, I know how to ask the right question. I can understand vaguely the code that it's giving me, which means I can then debug or ask it to rewrite the code or edit it in a certain way. And that brings me to a topic I really wanted to touch upon, which is whether I want to really learn coding and understand it fundamentally, or do I want to just use AI to my benefit as much as possible. Now, initially I was really on a camp of learning it myself. But recently, especially after being put under the time pressure with my two other founders to really be able to push this out as soon as possible, I realized there is just so much more that AI can help you do that you can't do yourself. My ultimate end goal is to build something. My ultimate end goal here is not to learn coding. I don't actually care about learning coding. Learning coding to me is a means to an end. I'm not learning coding for fun. I enjoy it to a certain degree, but I care about it a lot more whether I can actually build something that is useful, that I can actually work with. Okay, fine. I said I'm not going to show you, but I think I will, because this is just way too ugly to like not make fun of. The only reason why this is blue is because it's easier for me to see the layout. But in terms of functionality, there's a profile page, there's an event page for your event, the ones that you organize, and the ones that you're going by like reserving a spot. There's also a way to create events and view other users within the app. So that's what I have built in the last 3 or so days, which I am very proud of. I've been thinking about how my desk right now looks kind of empty, and I could really use a screen. So, which is why this is the best setup I can think of for now. I'm not really sure where to put the monitor because it looks a bit weird like this, but I guess we'll figure that out later. This is the monitor I used throughout law school, and since it still works, there's no point in me getting another one, especially since I'm not making any money right now.
Hey, feeling good, like I should. When in circle, walk around the neighborhood. Feeling blessed, never stressed. Got that sunshine on my Sunday.
I'm in a WeWork right right now, and I've just had coffee with one of my friends who's a VC who's also working on a community-based startup idea. I think this is definitely one of the bigger trends I'm seeing right now, how there's many of these micro communities popping up. As I mentioned last week, I met up with another founder who's also part of a few of these micro communities. And these communities that I'm talking about aren't even startup related, they can be any hobby related. So last week, my friend was talking about different chess night that he's part of, cards night that he's organizing. The friend I'm talking to today earlier, he's also the organizer of a regular wine night that he does. We were just talking about how there's many of these micro communities popping up. There's a rising need of people wanting a third space outside of their home and outside of their work. And really that's what our startup is trying to capitalize on. I also spent the last few hours continue working on building out the project, adding in some styling for the webpage. So I think I'll be able to show you like a really simple prototype very soon. It's 10:30 p.m. It's been a really productive day. Finished working at WeWork today and wrapped up the day by having a dinner with my parents. I just want to spend some time talking about some reflection I've had on this journey. Every time I feel really frustrated on this journey, I'll remind myself of why I started in the first place. I think this is really crucial because of how hard the journey is. So you have to constantly remind yourself of why you're even doing this in the first place. I'll quickly give you a breakdown of my reason of doing what I'm doing right now. Firstly, I think the future is one that belongs to generalists. Since the Industrial Revolution, our way of working really is specialization, right? Everyone is told to specialize in one particular thing. And that makes sense because in a big company, if everyone is specialized in one very particular thing, that means the big company as a whole will function a lot better. But with the speed of technology advancing and the speed of how the landscape of work is changing, I think the future is one that belongs to people who can do multiple things very well, people that can adapt really quickly and learn very quickly. By working in a corporate job, that simply doesn't give me the toolkit to be able to become a person like that. And secondly, I want to optimize for growth as much as possible, even at the risk of failing. I know that I can easily go into like a startup or even stay a few more years in consulting and learn there, but that doesn't really optimize for learning and growth. Instead, the best way to learn, to really grow, especially as a generalist, is really just to do my own thing, start from scratch, to learn about that process of going from 0 to 1. And ultimately, underpinning all those reasons of why I'm doing what I'm doing right now is I want to write a good story. Since young, I've always felt like the main character in the story. I've always felt like the protagonist. And that's actually one really good analogy for anyone want to do things that's remarkable. Imagine in your head that there's constantly a film crew filming you at all times. How would your decision making and your action be different? If I am the main character of this story, right? Am I living a interesting story? Am I living a cool enough story, exciting enough story that people will want to keep watching? It's easy for me to just go into a startup and work there for a bit. Easy for me to stay in consulting for a few years. Is that gonna write a good story? Not really. And that is another reason that really drove my decision making. And there's another thing that I really want to talk to that I think is really insightful, which is what I call the dilemma of entrepreneurship. I recently met a new friend of mine who's a few years ahead of me in terms of career. He's worked in a top tier investment bank for a few years. He's been a founder himself. He's also been a VC in San Francisco for a few years. There's one thing he told me that really stuck with me. I'll say this in Cantonese because that's how he told me, but I'll translate it to you. 當身邊嘅普通人越覺得你忽忽地嘅時候，你就越有可能係做緊啱嘅嘢。Which translates to the more those so-called normal people around you think that you're crazy, the more likely that you are onto something. And that really got me thinking. That leads me to the dilemma of entrepreneurship, which is that the type of people who are able to take this leap of faith are exactly the type of people that will more likely succeed on this path. I think what you need to succeed on this path are exactly the quality you need to go on this path in the first place. Critical thinking and ability to think from first principles. You also need an ability to be flexible enough to change your opinion on things, but also be persistent enough to stick something through. And finally, you can't be afraid of other people's judgment and failing in front of other people. So when people ask me if I'm afraid of failing, I think they're almost asking the wrong question, because this exact attempt of mine at entrepreneurship might fail, but that doesn't mean I failed. If this attempt failed, I would just keep trying. Now, that might take 1 year, 5 years, or 10 years, but as long as I keep failing and keep learning from my mistake, I keep course correcting, I think there's a very high likelihood that ultimately I will come out on top. As long as what's failing is my individual attempt and not my heart as an entrepreneur, I think, yeah, like I said, very likely to work out, because I feel like in the first place, the type of people that are ballsy and crazy enough to do these kind of stuff are the type of people that are more likely to stick it out to be able to succeed on this path. And that actually reminds me of a quote from Steve Jobs. The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do it. And that is a good way to wrap up this week's episode. I think it's quite late. It's 11. Probably gonna shower, go to bed. I hope what I just said makes sense, and I hope you found some inspiration in it. If not, at least it was quite entertaining to think about. And with that being said, keep building. I'll see you soon.